Thank you very much for coming to this very odd program to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the installation of our organ. I really appreciate your interest in this endeavor, and it's maybe an initial foray into getting people back into the sanctuary, which might be useful. I suppose I should point out fire exits, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. That one's handy, you can go right outside. A note about our organist today. A few members of the Sanctuary Seasonings Committee went last summer to a Bastille Day concert at Oak Street Lutheran Church on the Cornell campus. Last summer, that was. And we heard this young man, and my first thought was, boy, this kid is way more advanced than I was when I was his age. My second thought was, well, this kid is way more advanced than I'll ever be. So I thought, we need to get him here sometime, and this was a perfect opportunity. You can read more about him in the program, and he will talk about his pieces and some of the things that he's doing as we go along. As is our custom at the beginning of Sanctuary Seasonings event, I would invite you to join me in prayer. Dear Lord, in your book, you call upon us to praise you with pipes and strings and trumpets. Today we do so. And we call upon you to be a presence to us in these dismaying times, to provide health and healing and strength and understanding to all who need it. We ask your blessing on Caleb's music making for us, and we pray that this organ will always be used for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
That was Prelude and Fugue and Chaconne by Dietrich Buxtehude. He was a Danish-German composer, and actually J.S. Bach was a student of his. And there's a legend that tells that he traveled hundreds of miles by foot just to go take lessons with him to move to the city in which Buxtehude lived. This next piece is by this next set of pieces is by Hermann Schroeder. He was an academic for most of his life, but he had the great privilege of teaching Stockhausen, the very famous late 20th century composer. He composed mainly church music, Catholic church music, and he did that. He left behind a lot of works for the most of his life. So this will be the next three by Hermann Schroeder. This next piece is by Johann Froberger. He was a German keyboardist, so he played the harpsichord and he played the organ. And he played a lot of court music for the courts around Europe. And what's very interesting is that he forbade the publication of any of his works throughout his lifetime. So there were only 2 publications that were made, and both of them were very much without his consent. So he wrote several hundred of these toccatas, and toccata is an Italian word basically like an etude, so it's a finger exercise. But after they moved out of the lesson space, they became more concert pieces. So yeah. This next piece, or a set of pieces, is by the composer Dom Paul Benoit. He was a French monk of the Benedictine order. Dom is actually the title that the Benedictine monks give new initiates to the order. And he spent a lot of his days composing. So instead of prayers, as one does in a monastery, the abbot at the time had given him permission to write exclusively during his prayer times. So he got a lot of time to compose in over the course of his, I think it was 80 years when he passed away. So a big, long composing life. offer something completely different. The next composer is Franz Schmidt. He was an Austro-Hungarian pianist who was based in Vienna for most of his life. He was a pianist and cellist, actually, and he performed playing cello under Gustav Mahler for a lot of his court music, or the music that he conducted at the Academy, I'm sorry. This one of the preludes, it comes in a set. This one of the preludes is actually nicknamed the Hallelujah Prelude. So, enjoy.
I wouldn't have probably been comfortable having a 50th anniversary concert before we had the 2016 renovation of the organ, because the organ had so many quirks and things that needed to be worked around that it really wasn't anything you'd ever want to invite a guest to have to deal with. But thanks to the people who helped pay for the renovation of the organ 4 years ago, I have had a blissful organ life for the last few years, and we're able to do this concert. At the time that we took out the console, Doug Campbell, who is our organ technician and who shepherded the organ through the renovation and getting it reinstalled and everything, salvaged for me the little stop tablets that were on the old console, and he said maybe you could do something with these sometime. And so that concert that we gave, first with Diane that fall to rededicate the organ, I thought, oh, it'll be great. The people who gave money, I will have Carol make an ornament for them with a stop tab on it. And they can each have their own little organ stop thing. And so it got closer to the time of the concert and the time to put Carol to work, and I couldn't find them anywhere. And didn't find them for 2 years until we moved. And you know, when you move, you put your hands on everything. And I found them in the china closet, where of course you would put organ stops. So we are today honoring those people who, one, gave money for the organ renovation, or number two, helped on the day that we lifted the console back on a somewhat rickety little platform up to where it is and reinstalled it. Some people are here for the money and some people for the help. And So I'm going to give you a little education on the organ if you don't mind. Organ sounds are divided into 4 basic types. Principals, which as it suggests is the main sound of the organ. Flutes, which are always quieter. Strings, which are good for that sappy communion music. And reeds. So if you want to keep those things in mind as we go through this, and maybe look at the list in your program of the different stops, you might get a picture of what all we have up there. The first stop is the 16-foot quinteton on the grate, which is technically it's a flute stop, and because it's a 16, it plays an octave lower than the note that you put your hand or foot on. And it goes to a gentleman who lives in Massachusetts and of course isn't here, Art Kinney. That stop is on the Great Manual. The Great Manual is the main manual. It's where I play most of the hymns and so forth. Unfortunately, not many of the stops from the Great Manual survived the Great Demolition, so that's the only great stop we have. We move to the positive now, which is the bottom keyboard on the organ and contains the pipes that are on the 2 chests that are kind of out here at a diagonal. And the first one is an 8-foot flute. It's an 8-foot because it plays the note you are playing. It's the same pitch. This goes to a friend in Virginia, Barb Hathaway. The next 2 are 8-foot stops. These are kind of crosses between flutes and strings, and they're always used together. You can use the one without the other, but the other one you don't want to use without its partner. And so these appropriately go to 2 people who worked together here on our organ renovation, and one person in particular who has been a steady volunteer contributor to the tuning of our organ, Maureen Chapman and her husband Richard. The next one is the 2 2/3 Nazat. It's what's called a mutation, designed to give color to the overall sound of the organ. If you paid real close attention, and of course I didn't expect you to really, but if you heard this morning's service on the recording, I used the Nazat to introduce the second hymn. And this goes to Harriet Higgins. The tierce is another mutation on the positive, and it's tuned to sort of play a strong overtone of the third, also a color stop that goes to Bud and Diane Ames. The 8-foot crumb horn is one of my favorite stops. It's great for solos. On this organ, it's dependably in tune, and I use it a lot in preludes, less often for choir music. It goes to Jerry and Cindy Natoli. And I would just take a moment to mention, if you know Jerry and Cindy, Cindy is the daughter of Dorothy Furman, that Jerry has had some serious back surgery and is really in need of our prayers these days. Okay, the 16-foot regale on the positive is, plays an octave lower. It's a reed stop. If you've ever heard me simulate bagpipes for the beginning of Amazing Grace, it's the regale that does it. And the regale goes to Seth and Emily Walters. The next one is what is called a coupler. And a coupler takes stops from another manual and allows you to use those stops on a different manual. And this one, it pulls down stops an octave lower from the swell and you play them on the positive. And so this one goes to Tom Corey. And the reason that it's silent is that couplers don't do anything on their own. They don't have any sound. So Tom, a lesson in silence. However, just so you're not offended, there is a swell to positive 8 coupler, which is frequently used for choir accompaniments, and you will all understand why the swell to positive 8-foot coupler goes to Nancy Rakugler. And then we have the cymbal, what's called the cymbal, which is a mixture stop. Our organ has a mixture on each manual, and it's the stop that actually, when you play a note, plays more than one pipe. And it is always kind of the crowning glory of sound on that manual. Unfortunately, they also have the potential to really rattle hearing aids. And this is one I often use at Christmas. It goes to Chris Yanta. And then we move to the swell. The swell are the pipes on the left. If you can see the swell shades open and close, that's the area of the organ that is operated by the top manual. And the first one is a 4-foot flute called the Koppelflöte. It is the first 4-foot stop we've had. A 4-foot will sound an octave above what is being played, and you will understand when I say that this goes to a lady who was a soprano in our choir and is living in Florida now, Marilyn Preston. Another 4-foot on the swell that gets used often for the choir, and it's kind of a cross between a string and a principal because it has some harmonic development, kind of like a string. 4-foot goes to Bill Haight. And then we get to the trumpet on the swell. You couldn't do a wedding without the trumpet playing the processional. It's one of the best stops on the organ, go-to for everything, especially since Doug had some work done on it a couple years back to make it even better than it used to be. I couldn't live without this trumpet. And it goes to a very good friend of the organ, Gene Edwards. The 16-foot bason on the swell looks like it's spelled bassoon, but it's really called a bason after the French spelling, I guess. Plays an octave lower, an interesting sound, kind of like the regale on the positive, adds depth to the reed chorus, and that goes to Pete Adams. Okay, then we move to the pedal. And lots of the pedal stops survive the demolition. And besides, they're my favorites because my feet tend to work better than my hands. And the first one is the 16-foot contrabass, which is the principal 16-foot on the pedal, which plays almost every hymn that you hear on a Sunday. Plays an octave below where your foot lands. And it is the whole line of big pipes in the back there that you look at when you see the organ. And that goes to the guy who rode up that rickety lift that day, balancing the pedal board. I still have nightmares about the experience of watching him go up there. Russ Ruthig. Doesn't sound like much by itself, but man, you couldn't do without it. The 4-foot chorale bass is, as 4-foot, so it plays an octave above where your foot lands. And it's a principal on the pedal, again, used every Sunday on hymns. 4-foot it's an octave above, so, you know, it would suggest a singer. So this goes to Jan Stokey. And then this next one is an aspirational stop. It's a 2-foot flute. On the pedal, it's 2 foot, which means that it plays 2 octaves above where you're actually putting your foot. And I say it's aspirational because it goes to someone who would really like to sing higher but doesn't. Carol Foster. And then the mixture on the pedal, the one that adds the crowning touch to the pedal stops before you throw on the reeds. The 3-rank mixture, 3 ranks meaning that when you play one note, there's actually 3 pipes sounding, tuned slightly different to different overtones. And that goes to Dave Johnson. And hopefully you recognize that. The 32-foot contrabassoon is the lowest rank on the organ. 32 feet means it sounds 2 octaves below where your foot hits. When I played for the college choir years ago, the director asked me for a little more aggressive sound in the pedal. And I put this puppy on, and he said, well, I said aggressive. I didn't say World War III. This is the 32-foot contrabassoon, and it goes to Ron and Nancy Sickman. The 16-foot bazon on the pedal is one of the very few stops that's actually borrowed from another manual on this organ. One of the nice features of this organ is that it doesn't borrow a lot of stops. This is one of the few that does. In other words, when you pull this stop on in the pedal, you're getting the same pipes that sound if you pull it on in the swell. And it's a 16-foot bazon, and it goes to Cliff Kostick. And then another one of my absolute favorites, the trumpet on the pedal. It's a reed stop. Use it almost every Sunday, even if I shouldn't. I said to Carol when we started recording the services, I said, you know, I really overuse the reeds in the pedal, don't I? And today's service, I didn't use any on the hymns. I was very proud of myself. But you couldn't do without this stuff. I mean, it really adds guts to the pedal sound. It is the 8-foot trumpet, and it goes to Sandy Tuttle and her mom, Mary. Love that sound. The 4-foot zink, zink, as in Mozart, is again, plays an octave higher than your foot lands. It's a reed stop. It's a little quirky, and I'm going to leave it at that. You have to be very careful with it. And it goes to a man who did a lot of the work here on putting the organ back in. And he works in a field where you have to be really careful. Goes to Don Heath and Judy. Sorry. Lou Heath. I had a student, Don, one time. That's where that came from, I think. We have a couple couplers on the pedal that I use every Sunday, all the time. It allows me to make the pedal balance with the swell or the positive. The first one is the great to pedal coupler. Again, it's a silent coupler. It's a silent stop by itself, but absolutely essential. That goes to John Hart. The swell to pedal coupler is another quiet one. Absolutely essential for choir accompaniments. Goes to Carrie Harris. So when Caleb plays that, he's actually playing swell stops, the ones that are up on the left chest, but it's coming out, he can play them with his feet. The 8-foot flute on the pedal, useful for quiet accompaniments and for pedal or for choir anthems. It's an 8-foot flute. It's called the Gedeckt Palmer. It goes to Sean May. Boy, and when I'm sitting up there, it seems louder than that. And the last one we're going to cover today is the 4-foot hautbois, which is French for oboe. So it's on the swell manual, and it plays an octave above, and it sort of simulates the sound of an oboe. And I set that one aside for Caleb, and he doesn't know it, but that's yours, man. Thank you. And I will let him take over from here.
So these next two pieces that you're going to hear are both improvisations. And now while the word improvisation may seem scary, jazz, there's actually a very rich history of improvisation within the classical sphere, even though it is not normally associated with such. Especially during the Renaissance and Baroque periods, there was a very, the notation that a musician was given was actually very sparse. And it was up to the musician through a variety of rules in order to fill in those and to play and to fill out their part. But in terms of more church music and organ improvisation, it usually is based upon a hymn tune, and then using different patterns that we practice over time and we learn, like scales and arpeggios and whatnot. We can turn the hymn tune into something else, or we can take different hymn tunes and intersperse them into kind of this fun mashup. So the first one I will do is on Talis's third mode melody, which was originally called the Psalm Tone to Archbishop Peter blah 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 of England. I know it personally through I heard a voice that Jesus said, or I heard the voice of Jesus say, sorry. But what Talis actually wrote it to was, why fumft in fight the Gentiles spite in fury ranging spouse. So we will not be using, we don't use Old English anymore, but yes. So I heard the voice of Jesus say by Thomas Tallis, improvisation. for the final piece this afternoon, I will be doing an improvisation on King's Majesty by Graham George. He was a Canadian, surprise, organist, and legend tells it that he wrote the opening lines to this at his breakfast table, or it came to him in his head and then he wrote it down later. Yeah, enjoy.